We're back with the Engage podcast. Rich Wheeler of the negotiating committee and Shawn Kellett, the chairman of the scheduling committee. Let's talk reserve long call improvement. So the standard call out for long call has increased from 12 hours to 18 hours. Rich, what's the deal with that?
Well, the reason for that is one of the inputs that we got from reserve pilots is there's what we call the witching hour, which is the normal long call period, how that interfaces with your potential commute from home. There's always a gap there between the last flight of the night and when you could potentially be awarded a rotation that has a report time before you can actually commute into work. And one of our goals was to try to eliminate that. And some of the other changes that we made it possible to get an 18-hour long call. With that 18-hour long call, we feel that the witching hour is, I'm sure there's some one-off fringe situation where it may not be, but for the vast majority of pilots, we feel the 18-hour long call will eliminate the witching hour.
Well, talk to me about a reserve with conflict.
Right. So I think you've heard me mention before, there are certain items here that have kind of flown under the radar. One of the items is, in addition to the 18-hour long call, if you are awarded a reserve assignment or assigned a reserve assignment more than 24 hours prior to the report time of the rotation, at the 24-hour point, you are released from your obligation with the company. And so you have no contactability, no obligation to the company whatsoever. Clearly, though, there are probably some circumstances where the company runs into a situation where they need to have a different rotation filled. So Ryan, you get called and you get assigned a 4-day rotation and you have 36 hours to report. When you hit the 24-hour mark, you are released from your obligation. And really all you need to do is show up and fly the rotation that you've been assigned. At some time, the company gets into panic stations. We know that never happens. And they say, gosh, Ryan, we really need you to come out and fly this 1-day trip. And we know it's less than 18 hours, but holy cow, are we in a jam? We'd like you. And now you will go into iCrew just the same as you do today, and you can raise your hand and say, I'm willing to accept reserve with conflict rotation under these circumstances. And the great part about it is you can go out and fly that 1-day trip and you will receive the pay and credit for the longer trip. And that works all kinds of ways. That goes towards your reserve obligation. That goes into your raw bucket. That has all kinds of good things attached to it.
And that'll be via yellow slip.
Yes. Reserve yellow slips have kind of become the catch-all bucket for a number of these changes. So that's correct.
And a follow-up question to the 18-hour call out, that is conversion to short call as well. I get 18 hours notice. So 18 hours to conversion to something.
Right.
Is
It's no less than 18. So like Rick
Right.
said, let's say at 36 hours, they assign you something, well, at that 24-hour mark, you're automatically released. Even if those are reserve on call days, you're automatic released. Then if it's inside of that 24 hours, say somewhere between 18 and 24 hours, they call you with an assignment, you're automatically released at that time. So as soon as you acknowledge, whether you answer the phone or on the computer, that you had an assignment, you're outside of 18, inside of 24, you're automatically released at that time.
Okay. Short call. This has been a thorn in pilot's side for a while now. And so we've got some improvements to short call. The quick and dirty one is the elimination of the 7th involuntary short call. So that's done. Thanks for that. You talked about short call transparency during the road shows. I think that's good. And for those who don't sit reserve or not subject to short call, but a lot of times categories have, 8, 9, 10, 12 people on short call and only 3 departures. The 330 is subject to that quite a bit. And so this transparency and this restrictive nature kind of will help that, right? One of the first things, if you could explain, now a reserve pilot on short call who is not used gets pay on top of the guarantee for each short call sat.
Yeah, that's right. You get right now, it's simply absorbed into the reserve guarantee. So you don't see anything above it. And really, there's not a monetary disincentive, if you will, for the company, like you said, to put everybody in your category on short call. They'll clean out open time and then everybody that's left, they put on short call. Well, now it's going to be 1 hour pay, no credit above the reserve guarantee. So if you sit short call and you're not used, it's now above the guarantee. So obviously, if you don't fill up, you're still getting paid for that. It's now a monetary disincentive for the scheduler to just put everybody in that category on short call, because that will add up pretty quickly.
Sure. Now, if you reverse that, would it just incentivize scheduling to use short calls?
Well, the step to coverage haven't changed, right? So the step to coverage under 23 and 23 are identical. They haven't changed whatsoever.
Okay.
So they still have to go through 23 and step 1, 23 step 1, and go through that before they get to a short call pilot. So assigning overtime rotations to a short call pilot has not changed whatsoever.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. I just assumed, okay, hey, we're going to put 8 people on short call and we're going to use them all for those close in trips, or they can use it as a scheduling strategy. But it sounds like we're still protected by the coverage ladders.
The ladders do not change. That's correct.
And takeaway here is now for them to place a pilot on short call, there's a financial penalty for doing so.
Okay. And it's always been a surprise of when you're going to be on short call or when you're going to be converted. But now those are going to be published no later than 8 a.m. Eastern, something like that, right? The short call periods are going to be published the day before.
Yeah, without getting into the timing, because it's explained pretty well in the negotiator's notepad, as well as we're going to have schedulers that explain it. So people that want to look at the actual times and the numbers can look at those, and they're pretty useful examples. But the bottom line is we try to bring some predictability to the reserves as well, right? We've created, or in the process of creating, what we're right now calling a reserve open time. It may end up just looking like regular, good old fashioned open time. It may not be separate, but we're calling a reserve open time just for semantics. And there's going to be short calls in there. And pilots can go in and they can, through either PCS or manual trip coverage, they can go in and submit, hey, I'd like some short calls on these days. And they'll go through the normal PCS iterations, and you can be awarded short calls via PCS, which obviously you can't do now. That doesn't take away from the fact that if you're like, I don't want to fly anything, schedulers still have short calls to give out. They're still going to go through the current language of giving short calls for manual trip coverage. But yeah, you can, in advance, you can get short calls via PCS.
Okay. So theoretically, I could look into that reserve open time and say, oh yeah, I'll sit 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. short call, put in for it, boom. And now I'm helping my buddy who doesn't want to commute in for short call, et cetera.
That's right.
Okay.
Which doesn't change the current way. And I giggle a little bit because it's not great, but there's a yellow slip that you can put your preferences in for short call for manual short calls. A lot of times scheduling doesn't adhere to that. Right? They just kind of throw it out.
Almost never.
Right. That's what I was giggling, but this is meant to hopefully add a little bit of stability to that reserve pilot. Again, you see the idea is people that want to fly now have a lot of different opportunities to volunteer to fly. People that don't want to fly, they have more opportunities to sit on the couch. Now, they got to fly. Eventually they'll probably fly, but at least you have those opportunities now.
All right. So you talked about reserve open time, or the concept of such. So we have premium reserve days now. So this is another bell and whistle that we've creatively added to this TA. How does that work, and how does that differ from our current existing, right? Where you have additional reserve days that are available that scheduling never uses.
The idea behind the premium reserve day is similar to the silver slip, is to allow reserves to participate in grabbing some premium time in addition. And the idea behind it is you would attach these to the beginning or the end of your reserve day block. And you're basically rewarded with some premium time for keeping your block of reserve days. So rather than, sitting your block of 5 days and then maybe moving your next days around or dropping a PD and interrupting those block of days, you're getting a little taste of premium time. You're just raising your hand and saying, yes, I'm willing to keep my block of reserve days intact. And this is the premium that I'll receive.
Okay. And so the company will determine which reserve days they will identify as premium. They'll put it into reserve open time. And then you can add it on to the beginning or end of a block of on-call. So if I'm on call for a 4-day block in the wide body category, I see, oh, there's a premium day at the end of my block. I can pick it up. I'm awarded in seniority order, and it goes on as a 5th day at the end. And I'll get paid 7 hours, pay no credit. That's the phrase that pays 7 hours above the guarantee. And if you perform flying on that day, then you get the greater of 7 hours or as flown. I mean, that could be huge.
It could be. And the premium behind this is, yes, you are picking up an additional on-call day, but you're also getting a premium for leaving your reserve day block intact. So you're not breaking up your reserve obligation into chunks with a break in duty in there. You're keeping that block of reserve days.
And that's a key distinction too. So you are, in essence, so if you were required to sit 17 days of reserve, and you pick up a reserve premium day, you are now availing yourself to 17 days or 18 days, or whatever.
Yeah,
it's an extra one.
Yeah, it's a lot like a yellow slipping additional on-call days, which I think the company only used for one bid period in 2012. These would be very similar. You would pick up one of these over an X day. So you would essentially forfeit a next day if you're willing to do that, right? These can't be assigned. These are completely awarded, all voluntary, but you're doing so for a lot of pay.
Okay.
If you so choose.
Gotcha. Another bell and whistle. And if the company chooses not to use these bells and whistles, we're kind of back to the same construct of, increased reroute pay, increased quality of life constraints that we talked about in section 12 and in 23, right?
Right.
So if you remove all of the shiny metal things that we like, at the end of the day, we're still having an increase in quality of life and an increase in pay.
Sure. Yeah. There's nothing said slightly differently. None of what we just talked about, section 12, all the stuff in section 23, none of those are contingent upon this. So if the company chooses, for example, not to offer premium reserve days, well, we still got all the other stuff. We've got great reroute rules now. We have great hours of operation under section 12D, a lot of goodness that all of that, it remains intact if the company chooses to not do one of these things.
Okay. Last reserve part that I have, the X-Day swap board. Seems like a new feature.
Yeah, the regular pilots get to participate in the pilot-to-pilot swap board, and this is just a version of that for X-Days. Now, they do have to follow the same X-Day combination rules as it currently exists. But hey, if you have a buddy who's willing to work a day that you're looking to give away, it certainly gives the reserve pilots another avenue to try to get the time off that they need.
Okay. So that would be Rich. I'm on a block of 4 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I really need to be home on Friday. Would you take my Friday on call day?
Right. It would be an X-Day swap. So I would peel the next day off of your schedule, peel the next day off mine.
Okay. So we're not increasing the number of days on call. Sweet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and they still would, Rich alluded to, but it would still have to comply with currently section 12M8 for the X-Day moves and all the different rules associated.
Okay. Very good. So what's up with standby rotations?
Well, standby rotations are an idea. Let's say that the Yetis are invading Minneapolis and they need a lot of more pilots up in Minneapolis on reserve. And there's just no way to get that kind of coverage in Minneapolis. And so what they can do is, let's just say that they really need 320 pilots up there. They can build rotations in Atlanta or New York or wherever they have 320s. They can't just build these at random locations, and they can build short call periods into a rotation. It can be up to full 5 days for a narrow body rotation, up to 6 days for a wide body rotation. They put deadheads on the first and last day, and they can award these out, white slips, green slips, yellow slips, and pilots in other bases can have an opportunity. They go up, they sit reserve in Minneapolis or wherever the pilots are needed. Of course, they get hotels and positive space to get there. They get per diem while they're up there. And they sit a number of short call periods that are only 9 hours compared to the book short call right now. And then on the first day, they can deviate. If they want to deviate the last day, if they don't get used on that last day, they can deviate home, or they can sit in the hotel.
Okay. So other than gremlins in Minneapolis, like how would the company use this and how is this a benefit to the pilot?
Yeah, this is really a weather event, and they're actually very restrictive. First of all, they can only be awarded. They can never be assigned. So these are entirely voluntary, and they can only be created under the conditions of double 23K recovery, which has a significant financial impact to the company because they waive change fees. And that's normally involved in a weather event.
Okay.
And so this is a way to, temporarily get some more reserves up to where they're needing it. It's completely voluntary, and it can be quite lucrative for them. These are built as ordinary rotations, so they're $515 a day. And of course, they're awarded as green slips. They come green slip pay.
Yeah, some other restrictions, they can only be offered and awarded in bases that currently have that category.
Okay.
So again, the whole virtual base TDY thing, we got no concern there. They can be awarded to reserve and regular pilots. So reserve pilots are used to sitting short calls and RAFs. A lot of regular pilots aren't, but they can still, because this is going to be a rotation that's an open time.
I see.
And the rotation will be there. Let's say it's a 5 day. Day 1 and day 5 will be deadheads, scheduled deadheads. And day 2, 3, and 4 are going to be short calls or RAFs, same thing. And it will define in there, it will tell you what those are, the time, those 9-hour blocks. So you can go through and pick and choose. They're probably going to be different. They'll never be in the bid package, right? Because the trigger is some type of IROP within the company.
Right.
So these will be kind of last minute stuff that pops into open time, but you can go in there and look and you'll see what RAFs you're sitting. You're like, I don't want to sit those are earlier, maybe they're, but always awarded and never assigned.
Very good. Thanks for that. That's the bulk of reserve stuff. These are the major changes. There's a number of minor changes. You can look in the negotiator's notepad. I do want to ask about jetway trades. The flight attendants have it. We do not. It sounds like we've added it. The implementation on that is like 2 years from now, right? So we don't have to worry about it quite yet. But what's the vision here and how's it going to work?
Well, a lot of other areas do have jetway trades. I think a lot of people point out Southwest as one of them. Of course, Southwest is easy. They have one fleet type. So
Right.
that's easy peasy. A lot of people point out that this is something the flight attendants enjoy. That's also true, but the process for the flight attendants as it comes out is completely manual. They have a jetway tray desk that they man for the flight attendants. And of course, flight attendants can fly any aircraft. So we need to work through the pay and credit issues of swapping legs around, what happens to the various rotation guarantees. There's some FAR issues. Well, we also wanted to create a completely automated system where pilots can just simply go in the way the pod swap works, and it's transparent to the pilot. It doesn't cause any increased workload for anyone down the road. And so hammering out those issues, especially the automation part, is going to be a little tricky. And we want to make sure we have plenty of time to get those into place.
Okay. Very good. Shawn, anything to add? Anything we didn't touch on? Things that are exciting to you? Things that we maybe missed? Any downsides here?
It's honestly, it's all exciting to me because this is the biggest rewrite we've had really ever, a comprehensive rewrite in the entire contract. No one would argue that 23 probably needs to be completely rewritten, but I think the amount of gains that we have in section 23, and really all of them, in the fact that there's 0 concessions and anything that we've added is either premium pay or voluntary is all very exciting to me. So, and I'm the ultimate skeptic, and I'm pretty happy about what we have.
You are, and I've known you for a long time. Shawn calls it how he sees it. And for his opinion to be in favor of section 12 and 23 improvements says a lot. Rich, all the negotiators has worked countless hours on this. Rich, final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, in addition to the items that we've talked about here, there, as we call them, there's a lot of cats and dogs in section 23 that have changed. Some things are just irritating when it happens to you on that day. One of the examples of that is the reserve to regular line transition, where, hey, you're a reserve pilot and you're sitting that last day of on-call, the last day of the bid month, and now you get assigned a trip that carries over into the days off on your regular line. You've lost those days off and you had no say in it.
Right.
And that is a real drag if you've had something planned. And so now those trips are going to be proffers. They say, hey, we're willing to offer you this trip that carries into your days off, and you have the complete right to just turn it down. If you do it, you get some premium time, premium pay for the off days. But if you don't want to do it, you have the option to say no, because usually these assignments happen at the worst possible time.
Sure.
And there's some workarounds that take a little bit of fussing with your schedule. You can put a next day on the last day of the bid. That whole drama has been eliminated, and you can just simply say, you know what, I'm not interested in doing that.
Very good. Yeah. Overall, sounds like some big changes, big improvements. We'll see how this all plays out. But thanks for the work, really, from all of us. Negotiator notepads have a wealth of information. Dive into those. Read the language itself. As dry and as difficult as it is, we encourage you to read the language. Listen to the roadshow. Listen to old podcasts, episode 4 and 5 again. I'll plug that. There's plenty of others. Dig into the information. Make the decision for yourself. Ask the questions. You can send darts. Contact your reps. Everybody's here to answer those questions. The voting window closes on March 1st. And we'll see how this plays out. Rich Wheeler of the negotiating committee, Shawn Kellett, the old pro chairman of the scheduling committee. Thank you both. This is the Engaged Podcast.
Thank you.
This has been Engaged, the podcast for Delta pilots. Thanks for listening. My name is Ryan Argenta. Stay safe and keep the rubber on the road.
You're listening to Engaged, the podcast for Delta pilots. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your favorite podcast platform, and receive notifications when a new episode is available.